the variability is why are the 3 mall stores running at 12% conversion and the 5 mall stores running at 25% conversion? What is driving the variability?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you can always say it's associate engagement, behavior. Are you upselling? Are you making it fun for the customer? Are you getting them into the fitting room if you're in apparel?
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. How hard could running a store be? Isn't it as simple as keeping a bunch of products, renting a place, and selling? Also, how hard could it be when you have multiple locations where customers expect consistent experience when they visit any of these stores? Well, if e-commerce is hard, running a retail chain that is known for its customer experience like Starbucks or WholeFoods is equally hard. First, you need to make sure the customers can find the right products at the right place, and then you need to have consistent store experience across locations. In today's episode, our guest, Rachel Williamson, shares her insights on the nuances of retail store transformation. She also discusses how the customer experience starts right from hiring, having a playbook, and the importance of study and observations to handle execution and compliance issues. Finally, she shares several stories of various stores where the most store performance issues were related to problems such as not having a clean fitting room or having the right size that customers expected when they visited the store. Let me introduce Rachel to you. Rachel Williamson has spent the past 3 decades as a leader in brick and mortar retail and is considered a retail expert. She has successfully run stores, districts, regions, and companies. Most recently, she was the vice president of store operations for a 1,000-store chain in North America. Retail is in her DNA. In 2019, Rachel started a boutique retail consulting firm called Running Great Stores and is an advisor to retailers on running operationally excellent locations that impact the customer experience and deliver sales results. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sam. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
And I am super excited to have you as well because the kind of background you have, especially with retail business, and in my opinion, even though it may sound very simple, it's a very complex business. So I am going to be so excited to dig deeper into that. Just to get things off, Rachel, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus?
Yes, I certainly will. Thank you so much. And you're right. Retail is it's simple, but it's not easy. I guess
Yep.
that's how I talk about it.
Yep.
But let's start a little bit about my background. So I graduated from high school 2 years earlier than everybody else. And I worked in retail, and it really kind of bit the bug there. But when I went to college, I wanted to be a prosecuting attorney. My goal was to put all the bad guys away. The mafia was really big, very popular when I was young. And I was gonna, just prosecute them. I couldn't figure out how no one could really ever prove their crimes.
Yeah.
And so that was my goal. And
Yeah.
so I was working my way through college and working in retail. And when I wrapped up at Ohio State University, my employer offered me a really wonderful opportunity. And I was like, okay, I'll just do it for a little bit,
Yeah.
pay down some school loans,
Yeah.
and then I'll go back to law school. Okay. Well, 3 decades later, I never went back to law school. And it's been a really wonderful experience to be in retail. I started on the retail store manager side, and I was store manager, a very young store manager, and learned a lot. I was working with these small retailers. And then one day, a district manager from the Gap came into my store and I waited on him. And the next day he called me and he said, "You have to work for me." And that really started my career with
Awesome.
big brand retail, and really never worked for small brands again after that. So I was a store manager, district manager, regional, and then moved into store operations roles. I decided I want to switch from being on the store side to being on the corporate side and really be able to influence at a much broader level than I was able to do as a field leader. And so my most recent role is vice president of store operations for Justice. We had 1,000 stores in North America, Canada, and the United States, and had a small stopover in the vice president of transformation role, which was really an amazing experience and honestly set me up for what I do today, which is owning my own retail consulting firm called Running Great Stores. So, retail has been my career. It's my passion. And I can't even believe I get paid to do this every day. So it's pretty remarkable.
That's amazing. And I am actually going to ask you a fun question. So when you were doing your legal degree, your goal was to kick out the bad guys. So in the retail world, did you manage to kick out any bad guys? Did you find any bad guys?
Unfortunately, in retail, sometimes there's a lot of opportunities for people to make less than optimal decisions. And yes, unfortunately, there were times when I did have to terminate people for theft, and it's a bummer. But lots of good people who just unfortunately made a few bad decisions, and they course corrected, and that was a good thing. They weren't lifelong criminals, but so very, very different than prosecuting attorneys. The interesting thing was when I was at Justice, I worked very closely with our legal team. Yeah. And I remember early on, I would be like, "Oh, I so wanted to do your job." I mean, not corporate law, but so wanted to be a lawyer. After 2 years working with them, I was like, I am so glad I did not become a lawyer. Isn't that funny? And so here I am in my 40s going, I finally have let go of that regret that I never became a lawyer. I finally realized that, we are all wired to do a certain thing. Yes. And my certain thing wasn't law. Yeah. It was actually retail. And so, it's been terrific. But I mean, I've had the pleasure of working for such iconic brands. The Gap really instilled in me what operational excellence means, but, working for Bath and Body Works, Victoria's Secret, Express, The Limited 2, Justice, Ann Taylor, I've just worked for some amazing brands. And I'm just so grateful to my leaders who helped me become the retail expert that I am today. So,
okay, amazing. So obviously, I'm going to have so much fun digging deeper into all of that. But before that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest. And that is going to be, Rachel, your perspective on business growth.
Yeah. So great question. I'm going to start with a little bit of an analogy, if that's okay with you. You can't go to the Ohio State University and not be a Buckeye, right? And so I'm a Buckeye. My husband, my daughter, my brother-in-law, my cousins, we're all Ohio State alum. And I will tell you that we're in the middle of football season. Yeah. And it's been a little bit of a rough season start for Ohio State, already losing a game, but winning a couple others. But, I like to use the analogy of football and Buckeyes because they are a winning team. Yeah. And I think we're in business to win. We're in business to be winning organizations. Yeah. So when you think about football, in order to win football games, you have to be really good at blocking and tackling, right? What I call the fundamentals. They're the fundamentals, right? Your team has to know how to run. They got to have good endurance, but they need to know how to block and tackle. Yeah. But beyond blocking and tackling, think about the defense, right? That's where Ohio State's struggling this year. The defense needs to be able to read the other team. Yeah. And react in the moment. Yes. And that's where game losses have been coming from. Okay. Yep. Business is the same way. Retail stores must be focused on the fundamentals. Yeah. But the retail leaders must be able to pivot. Yeah. And to be able to read what's happening in the environment. Yeah. And to be able to make changes to how they do what they do. Yeah. One of the things that retail businesses have done, if you've been a brick and mortar retailer, brick and mortar and web, you can be both, and you've been around a long time. Yeah. You could blow the dust off of their playbook on how
Yeah.
they do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time to revisit that, right?
Yeah.
Retail businesses have to stop and rethink what they're doing, right? There's a lot of talk about AI and machine learning and all
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
and how that helps store operations.
Yeah.
And that's super cool stuff. And
Yeah.
for some retailers, that'll be the right way to go.
Yeah.
But many retailers don't have the dollars to spend
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
reinvent
Yeah.
the infrastructure of how their organization runs.
Yeah.
And so I really believe that there is, if you want to grow
Yeah.
and you want to keep getting better,
Yeah.
you have to continue to evaluate. Think about the football teams. What are they doing? When
Yeah.
they're not playing, they're watching video.
Yep. Yep.
They're
Yep.
studying
Yep.
their opponents.
Yeah.
They're studying their
Yeah.
own weaknesses.
Yeah.
And what I try and do is help retailers do that same thing.
Yeah.
Find out through your customer's lens what you should be doing better.
Yeah.
Find out through your employee's lens
Yeah.
what you should be doing better. Get out of that corporate office.
Yeah.
Get out of the echo chamber
Yeah.
where we all agree with each other
Yeah.
and go see what's really happening.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I think retailers can become more winning businesses in this very difficult environment. Listen, COVID is just one interrupter.
Yeah.
Over the decades, there's
Yeah.
always been something that has challenged retail and
Yeah.
made it a tough industry to be in. Okay. So COVID is just one more interruption, one more challenge for
Yep.
retailers to have to rise above. Maybe a harder one. This supply chain thing is insane. I'm
Yes.
guessing we're not going to see a lot of doorbusters this holiday because no one's got the inventory to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's really how I think about growth. Just think about where are you today? Where do you want to go? One of my favorite books, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yep.
Well,
I
this
agree.
is about personal leadership. I think it's also about business.
Yep.
What got you to this point
Yeah.
may not be what takes you the next 10
I
years.
agree.
And so, for me, my challenge in the clients that I work with is really just helping them think differently
Yeah.
about the same things that they do, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So what I am going to do is I am going to connect the dots a bit, the key themes that I found in the three questions that you have answered so far. You like to emphasize a lot on reading, the studying, okay? And that's obviously an art in my mind when you talk about really studying and really drawing conclusions that are going to be really beneficial for your business when you are going to make those key decisions. Now, let's talk about one of the other keywords that you referred is going to be your operational excellence. If you want to get the operational excellence, obviously you need to have the right data on your fingertips. If you don't have the right data, obviously it's going to be challenging. Now, let's talk about a traditional retail store or an average retail store. Typically, they are not going to have as much technology infrastructure, as you have already pointed out, that they probably don't have the dollars with them. And the decisions are going to be based on intuition. And I don't know if you see any sort of problems based on the kind of decisions that are being made. So do you have any sort of best practices, number one, in terms of the reading, studying, and how to get the operational excellence right?
Yeah, so two things. Let's kind of unpack what you just said. Let's just start with, how do they really read into what's happening in their business?
Yeah.
I like to use a process called design thinking.
Okay.
What design thinking does in its simplest terms is it helps you to just look at your business through the customer's lens of what pain points they experience when they shop with you. And how is that done? It can be done, walk into your stores, talk to customers as they're walking out. It can be done in focus groups. It doesn't have to be done in a complicated manner. It can be done talking to sales associates, pull a round table, a breakfast meeting, what have you. And really just openly listen, not defend. Don't justify what they're saying. Don't say, oh, well, you zip it. And listen, right? And that's really where, and so what happens then next with design thinking is we listen and we understand what the pain points are. And then we begin to prioritize. What is the job to be done based on what I heard? What are the priorities? What can we really solve for? What is the job to be done? Henry Ford once said, If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horse,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have said a car
Yeah.
because they couldn't envision a car.
Yep.
So many times what I help businesses do
Yeah.
is I help them think about what they're hearing from their customer, what they're hearing from their associates,
Yeah.
from their employees, and I help them process through what does the solution look like?
Yeah.
What should you be doing? Sometimes you have to take 10 steps back
Yeah.
and you have to evaluate the leadership model
Yeah.
that is being used, the hierarchy. Do you have regional managers, district managers, store managers? Like what is it? Sometimes you peel it back all the way to the fundamentals of how your stores operate,
Yeah.
and you begin to ask why. I love Six Sigma. I love the 5 whys
Yeah.
in order to get to the root cause of why something is happening.
Yeah.
And when you can get to the root cause, you can begin to be confident that you're
Yeah.
solving for the right things. One of the ways that I do that is I've created a digital playbook.
Yeah.
And that digital playbook helps retailers have the fundamentals in place
Yeah.
around people,
Yeah.
around the customer experience,
Yeah.
and around operational excellence. And it's absolutely everything you need. I would call it 30 years of best practices of running companies,
Yeah.
running retail companies. And that is helping. I have a great story of a retailer who has implemented that. When they started, they hired amazing talent. This company is really good at hiring top talent, and
Yeah.
they were willing to pay.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to get the best people for
Yeah.
very low salaries. They knew they needed to pay for good people.
Yeah.
They brought good people in, and they'd hire these people, and they'd say, "Where's the binder? How do I run the store?"
Yeah.
And they'd say, "You just run it. You just run it."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they were lucky because they hired really good people
Yep.
who
Yep. I
knew
agree.
how to make
Yeah.
good decisions.
Yeah.
But if you want to scale, if you want to get to 500 stores, let's call it,
Yeah.
you can't do it with 500 managers all doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And so early on, they had reached out to me and said, "We know that operationally we're okay, but we're not doing it in a way that's scalable. And
Yeah.
so we want your playbook so that we can build a repeatable, scalable model
Yeah.
where every store runs consistently."
Yeah.
I think about it like McDonald's fries.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I love McDonald's fries, but I stay away from McDonald's. It's not good for my heart.
Yeah.
Not good for my waistline. I
Yeah.
stay away, but I love the French fry.
Yeah.
When you go to McDonald's, no matter if it's in California or Florida, you expect the fries to taste the same, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
If they tasted different, what would you say? You'd be like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Is it old oil?
Yeah.
Have they not cleaned the grill
Yeah.
piece that goes down into what is it? And it makes you feel uneasy.
Yep.
It's no different when you're trying to build a retail store brand. You want customers who shop in your retail store to have the same experience in California as in Florida. That you want them to know what to expect. There's nothing worse than walking into a retail store and being disappointed
Yep.
at the experience because you hold that brand in high regard, and then something happens that makes it really negative for you, and it can kill your love affair with the brand. It can absolutely kill it. You find another brand to shop at. And so with this retailer, I mean, they are just seeing their results go through the roof, which has been incredible. And it's been so much fun to be part of. And I feel like their success is my success.
Yeah.
When it can be hard to convince people that operational excellence matters.
Yeah.
That it matters that you do the same things every day for your opening checklist throughout the day, your closing checklist, that your store is clean, that there's no fingerprints on the door.
Yeah.
Customers may not be able to tell you I won't shop in a dirty store, but let me tell you, when they walk into a fitting room and there's dust and dirt and goobies on the wall, they don't want to take their clothes off in an environment like that. And they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Right. But they may not tell you, well, it wasn't super clean back there, which kind of creeped me out. They're not going to tell you that, but they're not going to be back.
Yep.
So we need to pay attention to the selling model, the engagement, how the back room keeps inventory flowing to the floor, and, all of the processes. But when the day is done, it's always about hiring top talent and then having tools and processes in place to develop them to be the best leaders they can be. Because when people come into work and they are able to bring their best self and they're rewarded and recognized for doing that, what do you think the customer experience is like? Right?
Yeah.
So it's been really cool to see. I've got another client, true story. So, they were having a really hard time believing that a playbook would make a difference in their business.
Yeah.
They actually just really, even now, I don't think they believe quite yet what it can do.
Yeah.
So I was able to do something really interesting with the head of stores. And
Yeah.
I said, I want to visit 2 stores with you.
Yeah.
We went into one store. They took me to their best store first,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah.
Amazing store team. The manager gets it.
Yeah.
They know how to hire talent. They know how to onboard. They know the value of training. They recognize there's way to go notes posted.
Yeah.
Customer experience is great. The store was beautiful. Eat off the floor in the back room. Break area clean.
Yeah.
It was great. And
Yeah.
you might say, well, they knew you were coming.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Went to the next store who also knew we were coming.
Yeah.
The manager was okay, not great.
Yeah.
The back room was messy.
Yeah.
The break area was dirty.
Yeah.
The bathroom was dirty.
Yeah.
There were sizes in the back that were not on the sales floor. I want you to tell me, which store do you think is driving better sales results?
Obviously, the first
It's
one.
not a trick question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you use the word obviously.
Yeah.
This wasn't prepared, everybody. Everybody listening or watching.
Yeah.
You use the word obviously.
Yeah.
It isn't always obvious to retailers, but that is happening everywhere. I have a retail client that has a very large chain. And when I say this experience,
Yeah.
different, they're like, oh no, it's the same in every location. Really? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because the person that I traveled with
Yeah.
thought these 2 stores were the same too,
Oh, wow.
but they weren't. They
Yeah.
were very different.
Yeah.
And so what that experience did is it was like, okay, wait, I might need to stop and listen for a minute. I might need to listen to what you're suggesting to me. And so it's been an interesting and really rewarding experience. So being able to help clients, not because you want to embarrass someone, not because you want someone to feel like they're not doing a good job, but because you want them to truly look at their stores without the rose-colored glasses, throw those in the garbage can. They're not helping anyone.
Yeah.
And put on glasses where you can see.
Yeah.
I can see you.
Yeah.
And I can see what's happening. And I don't want to fire or punish store. I don't want to do that. But I want to put process in place, and I want to teach associates how to drive consistency from location to location. And that's really what operational excellence is.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So obviously, when you are going to have a couple of stores, you are probably going to have a lot of control. But obviously, when you are going to get larger, you might not have as much control. And
That's right.
these are the problems that typically come with the scale. And you mentioned a term called binder inside the store. So I don't know, everybody's going to say that we have some sort of processes here, but I mean, if they don't get complied, obviously that's not going to help anyone. So let's say if you are the VP of store operations, or you are the business owner that is trying to make sure that all stores have the consistent experience. Obviously, one of the things that is going to be that you start from hiring, you start, from training, you provide the consistent training to everybody so that they all have the same sort of taste in their mouth, right? But I can almost guarantee that, Rachel. So when you are, let's say, even if you train everybody, even then, I don't think the process is going to be followed. So what are some of the best practices that you have seen in terms of making sure that you have the operational excellence the way you are hoping to get in your boardroom, and that's getting reflected in your storeroom?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Sam. And I'll tell you, you're right. Putting a playbook in place is not a magic wand.
Yeah.
It's only the foundation of the house structure. Okay. But without a foundation, when the winds come and the rains come, the house, shifts, right?
Yeah.
So you need the foundation, but then you need process and accountability.
Yeah.
So what do I mean by that? So let's use an example. Let's say that you've got process in place, managers are following it, checks and balances. Then you have district managers doing visits.
Okay.
And they're asking questions. And there's typically a store visit summary that they utilize that allows them to evaluate all aspects of the store.
Yeah.
And let's start with the people component, right? And
Yeah.
you talk to me about who you're recruiting, who have you met? Right now, what are we hearing? No people anywhere, very hard to hire. And it's true.
Yeah.
Very hard to find people out there right now.
Yeah.
But what are you doing, store manager, proactively? What are you doing, district manager, proactively to be recruiting? So I provide a recruiting log and a process. So when it's only good if it's used. So I'm the district manager, let's say. I go in and visit with you, Sam, and I say, Sam, pull out your recruiting log. Who have you met in your mall, at your, at Starbucks, what have you, that you think might be good talent to add to our team? And then you pull it out and you say, all right, I didn't get out of the store as much as I wanted to, but I did meet 2 people and one of them's working today. And I'd love to walk you down so that you could meet them.
Yeah.
And again, may not have an opening for them today, but when you have an opening, what do you think you're going to do? Ding-a-ling-a-ling, Charlie, got that opening. We've got to talk. My DM's already met you. They were super excited, whatever. So again, it's what's that accountability, that DM saying, show me, tell me, help me understand how. And you do that with every aspect of the store. So let's say the whole people piece at the end of talking about all the different aspects. You're like, all right, let's talk about it. Based on our conversation, store manager, do you think this is a strength for you?
Yeah.
Do you think it's satisfactory?
Yeah.
Do you think there's developmental area?
Yeah.
And when they say, well, I'm doing this really well, I'm not so good at that, I think it's satisfactory. But you know what? One of my goals is going to be that I'm going to get better at this, and this is how I'm going to do it. Okay. And they set that target, that SMART goal, and they move to the next section. And let's say we're talking about operations and maybe the back room is a mess. What I find is you can't just tell people what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
You have to ask them questions. You have to understand, what do they believe to be true about it? Let's use an organized back room.
Yeah.
When I was a DM, I'll pivot for a minute. When I was a district manager for Bath and Body Works, I had a lot of locations and I was right by corporate office. So I always had the CEO coming in, the executive team coming in, because it was, 10 minutes from the office.
Yeah.
And so we had to be ready for our customers first and foremost, but I didn't want any of those calls. Rachel, the CEO, was in a location and it wasn't good, right? So a little bit of a motivator there.
Yeah.
But there was one particular store I had, very high volume, very high performer, really strong team, but their back room was a disaster every time I went in.
Yeah.
And the first few times, being the young, naive DM that I was like, let me just help you.
Yeah.
We'll get it cleaned up.
Yeah.
And then I need you to maintain it. And every time I will absolutely maintain it. Yes, I will. But every visit, the back room looked terrible. And I was like, okay, we got to do something here. And I was getting like, I'm going to have to fire this person. That you can't run a high volume store with a back room like this. You get goods missing from the floor, whatever.
Yeah.
And then someone told me the ketchup story. And the ketchup story is about a young lady that worked at McDonald's who worked the hamburger assembly line.
Yeah.
And they trained them, you do the bottom of the bun, the patty, the cheese, lettuce, 1 squirt of ketchup, 1 squirt of mustard, put the top on and wrap it up.
Yeah.
But this gal was doing 2 squirts of ketchup every time.
Yeah.
And the line manager was like, 1 squirt of ketchup. Okay. And then he'd watch her and she'd still do 2. Next shift, he's like, 1 squirt of ketchup, don't forget. Okay. And she'd still do 2. So he goes to a store manager and says, we got to get rid of this girl.
Yeah.
She's non-compliant. She's not following the rules. I've trained her. I've given her feedback in the moment, all the right things, right?
Yeah.
The DM says, well, don't fire her. Let me talk to her.
Yeah.
So the DM comes in for a visit and sits this gal down and says, how has it been going here? How do you like it? She's like, oh, I love working here. How was your training? Training was great. Went through onboarding. It was all good. The DM says to her, I'm just wondering about something. I keep hearing how, even though you've been told it's 1 squirt of ketchup, you keep doing 2 squirts. Can you tell me why?
Why? Exactly.
And she goes, everybody loves 2 squirts of ketchup. I love 2 squirts of ketchup on my hamburger. It makes it taste so much better. And the district manager says, okay, you like 2 squirts of ketchup, but let me tell you the reality of the drive-through business.
Yeah.
When customers get a hamburger, when there's 2 squirts, it drips down the front of their clothes and they have to go back to work.
Yep.
So what we've learned is 1 squirt keeps it all inside the burger. You don't get the mess, but we'll give them as many free packets of ketchup as they want.
Yep.
The girl goes, oh, you were just being stingy on the ketchup. Okay, I totally get it now. So she goes back and works the line. And how many squirts of ketchup do you think she put on the burger after that conversation?
Just 1, because now she understands.
The 1. because she understood. And so that aha moment for me helped me approach the back room conversation with my manager differently.
Yeah.
I went and said, tell me why your back room looks like this all the time. We keep talking about it. She's like, I just don't think it matters. We sell goods so fast. All we do is get it to the floor. It doesn't even sit back there long enough for neatness to matter. Now I understood what she believed to be true about an organized back room. Then I was able to work to influence how she thought about her back room. Once I did that, her back room was never a mess again because she understood what the need was. And so as you think about trying to get people to comply, it's not really about compliance. It's about teaching people to understand why it matters, right? And so this has really been what's driven my success as a retail leader. And it's what helps me drive my clients' success as we talk about, we're going to put the playbook in place, but then I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to teach your district managers, your regional managers. We can't just go in and tell people what to do. We need to ask questions. We need to understand what they believe to be true. We need to reinforce, and we need to be good at influencing. This is one of my favorite books. It's called Influencer. And it's probably one of the best books out there about teaching leaders, not just in retail, how to influence people, whether they're their direct reports or not. But anyway, so hopefully that helps you understand kind of what the approach must be. You're right. Playbook isn't a magic answer, but it's how to implement, how to execute, how to follow up, and how to hold teams accountable and able to really run great stores.
Amazing. So, amazing story there, amazing examples there. So obviously that puts a lot of things in perspective in terms of the challenges that the retail stores or the store managers are going to run on a daily basis. Some of these problems, may seem obvious. Obviously, they are not as obvious because they are not getting fixed, as you know, from the visits. But let's say, obviously, we all know that some of the things can be fixed by training, by explaining them how to do things. But when you, let's say, and I don't know if you have any complex problems that you have solved that were really difficult to solve that probably you didn't have experience in solving. So do you have any specific stories where you sort of knew that, I had my playbook down. I had worked with a lot of different customers in the past, and there should not be any problem because I already know how this works. But then you got this problem that was really, really difficult or complex for you to solve. So maybe describe that story and describe how you had solved it.
Sure. So I guess as I think about maybe the story that would be the most meaningful to share with you here and to share with the audience, it would be an example of where we did do an implementation and the team was really struggling with it. And part of it was there was just no data available. And the organization had no money to invest in the really high speed data. And so it was, and honestly, the data side of things, I believe in being an expert in role. So I'm not going to, I stay in my swim lane, right? I'm over there looking at the data side and I'm like, that's what I let my finance friends do. And so I was talking to all these other retail consultants that are more on the data side. I'm like, how are we going to solve this for these guys? They don't have the money to do this implementation. What are our options? And honestly, I hated how long it took to come up with a solution. But what we ended up, because, I'm like, I usually have, I'm confident in what I do. And when I stay in my space, I can pretty much solve anything. But in this particular instance, what we were able to do is we actually had to sit down with the finance team. And this is going to sound ridiculous. But it's just a matter of having to do what you have to do. We actually had to teach them how to take an Excel document and build it out to be able to pull data and information in order for the head of stores to be more knowledgeable about what was going on. It was what I'd call MacGyvering the solution. Who remembers the MacGyver show where he could like fly an airplane with like a toothpick and duct tape and what have you. And they have since moved to a really high speed solution. But at that time, what we were able to do was we were able to just build something that we never would have sold as something that we would have liked doing. But, it ended up being a transition for them to be able to really see and measure the variability in performance to get to the specific root cause. When you have, whether you have 10 stores or 1,000 stores, one of the powerful things to look at is the variability from store to store.
Okay.
The variability from district to district. And when I say variability, I'll use a metric example. Let's say that you have, 5 mall stores over here that run at 25% conversion. You have 4 strip center stores over here. They run at 42% conversion. And then you have 3 other mall stores over here and they are running at 12% conversion. The variability is, why are the 3 mall stores running at 12% conversion and the 5 mall stores running at 25% conversion? What is driving the variability? And so, you can always say it's associate engagement, behavior. Are you upselling? Are you making it fun for the customer? Are you getting them into the fitting room if you're in apparel, what have you? But there are other nuances that drive conversion, center type to center type. This organization looked at all locations as equal. And so first we had to teach them all locations aren't equal. You've got to separate out the different types. Lifestyle centers behave one way, strip behave another way, mall behave another way. So let's organize the locations first by the type of center they're in. Then let's organize them by what type of door they are. So are they an A door? They get the full assortment. Are they a C door? They get very little of each thing. And so we were able to just build for them metrics that they needed to look at in order to be able to understand the variability and then go after it. The value and where they picked up lost sales was in shrinking the variability between same type locations. And that was done through, additional training. In some instances, we did some tests. We gave them more inventory. We gave them more sizes. They were always out of the same sizes. It's like, okay, if we give them more of that size, will it help drive conversion, et cetera? And so again, while it was so manual and so old fashioned, it worked for them. And it helped them to be able to think differently about, again, not all stores are created equal. And do it in a way that costs them nothing because it's Excel. And then when they were able to, upgrade it and get more technology in to help them do it, the understanding, the belief was already in place, right? So that was probably one of the more complicated, because I was just like, I don't know how to build it. Right. Don't know how to do VLOOKUPs. Everybody out there, judgment-free zone, please. Can't do VLOOKUPs in Excel. I hire people to do that for me.
That's completely okay.
But you run into these situations where you can't, the retailer isn't ready for. I love these traffic counter companies now that are using artificial intelligence and machine learning. They use cameras. They train the cameras to recognize who the sales associates are. Then they weed out those sales associates from the traffic and conversion numbers because the camera's been trained that they're the employee. And you get much cleaner data. If you look at the old way of traffic counting, where you've got the little unit at the front door and it clicks every person who walks in. Well, when your associates walk in and out for lunch, for breaks, what have you, coming in for their shift, leaving for their shift, it artificially lowers your conversion. And so those are, I hate those honestly now, because there's advanced learning out there, advanced ways of measuring results, what we can be doing to drive and improve a result like conversion. But again, not every retailer out there is making those sizable investments in more advanced technology. So it's, how do we help them understand where to invest those dollars, what technology matters? And so I'm aligning myself and my organization with other vendors who offer really great services, who have a more advanced way of thinking about things and what have you. So it's been great. I don't think any of us can walk this road alone. So I think having, I've got a scheduling expert organization that I work with. I've got a traffic counting organization expert that I work with. I've got a communication platform organization that I work with, so that holistically, whatever a customer might need, whatever a retail client might need, I've got some proven really great partners who can step in and help them with what they need. And that's been a great learning for me as I've been growing my business.
That's amazing. So quick touch up on that. So the conversion that you mentioned, my e-commerce buddies, must be scratching their head that, okay, in my e-commerce, I measure the conversion based on, the traffic I get because I already know how many people are visiting the site and how many people are converting from that. Now, how does store conversion works? Can you provide some more colors there? How do you measure the conversion?
Store conversion it's pretty easy. It's the number of people who actually walk in the front door versus the number of people who make a purchase. So the best way to measure conversion now, I mean, most retailers are using these devices that sit at the front door, and they just literally click counts people walking in. You can adjust it to height where you're not counting a child in a stroller, or you're not counting a 4-year-old that's holding mom's hand or dad's hand walking into a store. But those old styles of counting are just a little less accurate. Now what is out there is I can count the number of people who walk in. I cannot count my employees coming and going for lunch.
Yeah.
And I can understand how much time people spend in certain parts of the store.
Yeah.
So I can understand the impact of visual merchandising. But when the day is done, if you walk in, you make a purchase, and you walk out with a bag, that's conversion. Okay. Customers here's what's interesting, right? You walk into a retail store and talk to the store manager and you say, what's your conversion here? And they'll say, oh, it's 6%. It's like, so good. Okay. So then I'm 6%. So 100 people walked in today and 94 of them walked out buying nothing. Is that what you're telling me? And then they're like, oh yeah. Oh, that's bad. I wonder why those 94 walked out and bought nothing. So again, it's how do we frame things in a way that help our managers understand what is the experience, and are they really aware of how many people are walking in their store? And so typically your traffic and conversion is going to be tied to your POS system. When they take a read at the register or on their iPad, whatever they're using, they're able to see how many people walked in. And so it's not just a question of what was your conversion. The question is, what is your traffic?
Yep.
Because your opportunity lies in your traffic number.
Yes.
And so it's a very interesting conversation always. But you'll walk into some locations and they're like, oh, well, we have groups shopping on the weekends. And so, we make excuses for why conversion can be low. And it's like, okay, I hear you. Let's do this. Let's do our helicopter exercise. Let's hover. And let's just look at what the engagement looks like.
Yeah.
And you stand up front, with a DM or a head of stores or regional, whatever. And you watch and they're like, no one's talking to that customer. No, I'm going to go help them. Like, no, you're going to stand here and you're going to watch, right? You just watch what's happening and really get the full picture. Yeah. And so it's a great exercise to do. It's so eye-opening. And I encourage store managers to do it on their own stores, on their own teams. And again, we're not trying to catch people doing things wrong. Yeah. We're trying to identify opportunities and then coach people, come alongside them and help them. I always say when a manager's doing something that maybe isn't the best way to do it, we probably need to look in the mirror. We probably didn't teach them or train them or provide the resources on how to do it. And so it probably is our responsibility. Yeah. So let's just do it. Let's just go back and teach them and train them. But let's ask questions. They get way more from doing a helicopter exercise with their leader than they do their leader walking in and saying, why is conversion still just sitting at 6%? Why is it not gone up? Like, are you not waiting on people? Okay, well, that's like the most offensive thing you can say, because the manager believes that they're waiting on everyone who walks in. And so until you can stand back and allow them to evaluate it through fresh eyes, it drives them nuts. I mean, they're like, just let me go wait on them. And I'm like, just give it a minute. Let's see if they'll break away from the customer they're waiting on and wait on them. Just give them a minute. Yeah. But it's a really eye-opening exercise, and you can do this with almost anything about running a store. You can, I'll do exercises where they're not getting goods to the floor. Tables are empty. Yeah. And they're like, why is the table empty? Like, they have to check off in the morning. The floor's been filled in. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, let's just go observe the stock people in action. Let's just watch them. Yeah. What do they do? What process do they follow? You might just find something little that if you tweak it, it's all of a sudden going to fix it. And so just teaching leaders how to stand back and observe and ask questions, and don't take the first answer as the pat answer. Dig deeper, ask why, get to the root cause of something. That way you'll solve it once and you probably will be good after that. You may not, you may have to go back and revisit it again, but in general, you'll get to a better solution than if you ask a question, they give you an answer, and you immediately go to solve mode. It's like, I'm going to ask you why a few more times, not to annoy you, but just to make sure that we're really solving for the right thing here.
All right, amazing. So that's it for today, Rachel. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts or remarks for our listeners?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think the only thing that I would say is if you are, a digital native brand, direct to consumer brand, and you want to open brick and mortar stores, and the idea of running a store freaks you out, and you're even more worried now that we've talked about all these things that you need to think about, when you're ready, I'm here. And even if you just want to talk about what the things you should be thinking about as you branch out into brick and mortar and you decide that you want to run stores too, I'm here for you if you need me. And a direct to consumer is really doing a lot of fun things in the brick and mortar space. And so we have found our niche with the D2C guys, and we're looking forward to helping as many of them as we can.
And my personal takeaway from the conversation is going to be that even though you might be just the e-commerce brand right now, but there is going to be a merge of digital and physical, and especially with DTC, there are going to be far more nuances. So everybody needs to understand how to get the fundamentals down of retail before you can advance on your skills. On that note, I really want to thank you for your time, Rachel. This has been a powerful episode.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Rachel, head over to runninggreatstores.com. It's runninggreatstores.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Paul Sklar, who takes us through the retail industry's deep dive. Also, the interview with Rick Watson, who shares how to plan for warehouse and logistics architecture for DTC brands selling through marketplaces. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to get you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.